Kesubos Daf Tzadi Aleph begins in the sugya of two sets of sons from two separate wives trying to collect Kesubas Benin Dichrin. The Gemara is discussing whether you can do that if only one wife is giving Kesubas Benin and Dichrin and not the other. The Gemara will explain Machlokes Tanaim on the subject, then the Gemara will get into the halacha. Then we get to the one Mishnah that's on the daf that further discusses some of these concepts. Afterwards, the Gemara will bring a number of cases, the first few in a long list of cases about people trying to collect money that was owed to them after somebody had died. So let's begin. We're in the middle of discussing the concept of Kesubas Benin Dichrin when there are two wives and only one is being mezaka her children with Kesubas Benin Dichrin. So first of all, what does Kesubas Benin Dichrin means? That means somebody's married, he promises his wife that if she dies before him, so she never collects her ksuba, her children will collect the ksuba. And that means that after he dies and his children are inheriting his property, the children of this wife will get their ksuba extra besides the inheritance that they're splitting up. Meaning if he has children from other wives, they'll all split all his property evenly, except for the amount that's promised to this woman in her ksuba will separately be paid to her children. They'll get that money extra. And the Gemara's question is that true in a case where only one set of children is getting Kesubas Benin Dichrin and the other children are not? Possibly we won't allow that because we're going to end up fighting over the money. It could be that we only allow it when all the kids are getting Kesubas Benin Dichrin from their mother. So even though they're different amounts because they had different amounts on their Kesubas, at least everybody's getting something extra besides the inheritance, whatever's left over that's being split. Now, that was a question that was being discussed. We also had another halacha that you can only give Kesubas Benin Dichrin if there is other money, at least a dinar's worth, that's being split according to the halachas of Yerusha D'Oraisa. You can't have the only Yerusha be D'Rabbanan and not D'Oraisa. Now Kesubas Benin Dichrin is a takanas chazal to Yerusha D'Rabbanan. If there's no other money besides, so that they can split in accordance with the halachas of Yerusha, then you can't do Kesubas Benin Dichrin at all. And we're discussing what type of money qualifies for that. So the Gemara has tried to show there's a Machlokes Tanaim over this concept. Can you collect Kesubas Benin Dichrin when only one set of children are receiving it? The Gemara brought a case where a man had two wives, one died before him, and his kids, he therefore inherited her, and her kids want to get Kesubas Benin Dichrin from him. And a second wife, and she died after him, and his kids get her ksuba. She was zocha to her ksuba, which she was zocha to when he died, and now her kids get that as a regular ksuba, and they also want an inheritance. That, of course, is a chov, which takes precedence over an inheritance. So the only way that the children of the first wife can get anything is if there's a Kesubas Benin Dichrin that they get. Otherwise, the money has to go to pay off the chov, which is a ksuba to the second wife first, and if there's not enough left over after that, they won't get anything. So we had seen the machlokes in this brayso. So the Tanakama said that the kids come and take, which the Gemara is assuming up to now, we'll say we're going to switch soon. The Gemara is assuming that means that the kids of the second wife are getting the money because their mother was zocha to the ksuba from her husband when he died, and they're taking that ksuba, which is a chov, which comes first before any inheritance. And there we saw that the Tanakama said that they get that, and Rabbi Shimon said if there's an extra dinar, then you'll be Kesubas Benin Dichrin, which the Gemara is assuming means to the first set of kids they'll get Kesubas Benin Dichrin. Of course, you need an extra dinar because that's the halacha. You always need an extra dinar for Kesubas Benin Dichrin. The more saying this seems to be a machlokes of any case where there's only one set of kids getting Kesubas Benin Dichrin, do they get it or not? So the Gemara says now there are other ways of learning this. And that's Rav Shimon was not saying that they get Kesubas Benin Dichrin, and the Tanakam is saying they're not. They're actually arguing over does the dinar count as a dinar or not. They're talking about situations in which the dinar may not count. So the Gemara's first attempt is to say that they're talking about where the dinar was metaltal, it was movable objects and not karka. That is, the Tanakama holds that the extra dinar has to be land. If it is metalton, it doesn't count, and therefore he says the first set can't get Kesubas Benin Dichrin. Shimon says no. If there's an extra dinar, even if it's land, even if it's metalton, they do get Kesubas Benin Dichrin. Now the Gemara rejects this pshat right away because the next Mishnah, which we're about to see on the page, Reb Shimon clearly says that the extra dinar has to be karka. It can't be metalton. Therefore, this is not a correct pshat. So the Gemara there goes to its second pshat. Now the Gemara says no. Maybe they're arguing over if the dinar that we want to use as the extra dinar is owed to somebody. Somebody has a shibud on it. The question is, can you use a dinar that's owed to somebody? Does it count or not? The Tanakama says no. Therefore, again, the first set of kids don't get Kesubos ben Dechren because there's no extra dinar. And Rishonim says no, that counts, and therefore they do get Kesubos ben Dechren. Now the Gemara doesn't have any problem with Rishonim holding this way, but the Gemara shows that the language of the Brisa is not correct according to this pshat, because Reb Shimon should say he's being lenient and he's saying, hey, there is an extra dinar in this case, and this counts. This dinar that has a shibud on that counts as an extra dinar, and therefore they get Kesubos ben Dechren. That's not what he says. He says if there is an extra dinar, then it's okay. That means he's not arguing and saying that there is an extra dinar, this counts as an extra dinar. He's saying, if there be an extra dinar, it would be okay. Says Gemara, a third pshat. They're arguing over when there's less than a dinar. That Rosh Hashanah holds you don't need a dinar. Even less than a dinar is okay. Tanakama says less than a dinar doesn't count. Rosh Hashanah holds less than a dinar is okay, and that's why he's saying. So now the Gemara says, what do you mean? That's why he's saying. That's why he's saying what? This doesn't make any sense. He says clearly if there's a dinar, he can't be holding of less than a dinar. Gemara therefore says, let's switch our entire understanding of this brisa. When the Tanakama said that the sons collect, they weren't talking about the second sons and saying that they collect and there's no Kesubos ben Dechren they get because they're getting a real Kesubos chov. They're talking about the first sons who are getting Kesubos ben Dechren, and the Tanakama therefore is the one who's saying that they do get Kesubos ben Dechren. And when Reb Shimon comes along and says no, we split it evenly, he's saying there's no Kesubos ben Dechren. We're totally flipping the Mishnah now, and therefore he came along and he said there is no Kesubos ben Dechren, so it doesn't count. And he was saying because it's less than a dinar, and the Tanakama is the one who was saying that less than a dinar works. The Tanakama also doesn't hold that less than a dinar works, because in our next Mishnah the Tanakama says that he also says you need an extra dinar and not less, and it's the same Tanakama in this brisa that we're discussing as in the Mishnah that's coming up. So the Gemara therefore says, okay, we'll stick with this pshat and we'll go back to our first two explanations. The Tanakama is the one who says there is Kesubos ben Dechren, and that's because either it was metaltalin or because the second shot we said was that there's a shibud on the money, and they hold that counts as an extra dinar, and Rosh Hashanah says it does not count as an extra dinar. That's why he comes along and says if there would be a real extra dinar, then you would be able to collect Kesubos ben Dechren, but you can't, and therefore they split it evenly. The Gemara now discusses the halacha in these two cases. When one set of sons gets Kesubos ben Dechren, the other does not, can you give them Kesubos ben Dechren? We're afraid that the other one's going to fight with them. And second of all, can a ksuba that is being awarded as a real Kesubos chov, that is the mother of the children, she died after husband, she gets a ksuba, does that count as the extra dinar to allow the first set to get Kesubos ben Dechren? So the Gemara says there is Kesubos ben Dechren even if it's the only one, and the awarding ksuba counts as the extra dinar. That's okay. So the Gemara says, I understand why you need to say both of these halachas, at least why you need to tell me the second halacha. If you only said that there is Kesubos ben Dechren when there's only one set of sons, that's getting, I understand that doesn't tell me that that's true, even if there's no dinar left besides the one that's being paid out as part of a second ksuba, because maybe that's only referring to a case where there is plenty of money left besides that. However, why don't you just tell me the second halacha and then I know the first halacha? If you tell me that the ksuba that's being paid out counts as an extra dinar, that means you're obviously giving somebody else a Kesubos ben Dechren, and they're obviously the ones that are receiving this dinar money are not getting Kesubos ben Dechren because they're getting paid as an inheritance from their mother who outlived their father, and this is a Kesubos chov. So there is no Kesubos ben Dechren here. So obviously the first pair are getting, second one or not. So why don't you just tell me a second halacha and I'll know both? So Gemara says no, there is a case where the first halacha is possible and there's no problem of Kesubos ben Dechren issues, and that is if you had three women, the first two died before their husbands, both of their sets of sons are getting Kesubos ben Dechren. The third one outlived her husband, then she died after he died. She gets her ksuba and inherits that, bequeaths that to her children, but he only has daughters, and those daughters therefore don't inherit anything. The only thing that they're receiving is from there's no question of them arguing over the Yerusha with the other sons, because she doesn't get a Yerusha. Now, there you have a ksuba that's paid out. That ksuba that's paid out counts as an extra dinar, and here there's no concern of Kesubos ben Dechren not being spread evenly to everybody, and therefore this case would not be a proof. This could be the case where the halacha is that a ksuba that's paid as a chol counts as an extra dinar, and does not tell us that a Kesubos ben Dechren can be paid even if not everyone's receiving it. All right, this concludes the Gemara, and now we get to our Mishnah. The Mishnah teaches the halacha, which we've been discussing all along, the halacha of the extra dinar you have to have in order to award Kesubos ben Dichrin. And it presents it in the following case. He had somebody who's married to two wives. They both die before him. Both their kids want Kesubos B'nin Dichrin. They did not have the same amount. One had a larger Kesubah than the other, and therefore makes a difference. It's not an even split if they get Kesubos B'nin Dichrin. So the halacha is that the Tanna Kama says you have to have an extra dinar besides for what's being paid out as Kesubos B'nin Dichrin in order for them to be able to get Kesubos B'nin Dichrin. If there's no extra dinar, if it uses up all the money, then they cannot get Kesubos B'nin Dichrin. Instead, they all have to split their property, the property of the father evenly according to the halachos of Yerusha. Now, next halacha is what if the children of the larger portion, the one that has a greater ksuba, says, you know what, I'm going to evaluate our father's property at more. We're going to place it, we'll consider it to be more valuable. And therefore, with this new evaluation, now there's extra money left over. So they're giving away some of their stuff because they're evaluating. The property is higher. They're considering it to be worth more than it really is. But now they get much more because they'll get their full ksuba, which was larger than the share that the other kids are going to get from their mother, which was a smaller ksuba. So Gemara says that they can't do that. We go with a evaluation that's made by the Beis Din. It's not subjective. They can't inflate it in order to be able to get their Kesubos B'nin Dichrin larger than the other ones. Now, the Gemara, the Mishnah now discusses what type of property counts. So anything which is owed to the estate does not count. It has to be something that the estate is actually holding. And now what about metaltalin? So there Reb Shimon says it's got to be land. It has to be in the Chasim Rishon Machrayis. Movable property does not count as the extra dinar that we are requiring. Now begin the Gemara, which starts with the Brisa. The Brisa expands slightly on this Mishnah, and it says, if one ksuba was for 1,000 zuz, if one ksuba was for 500 zuz, as long as there's an extra dinar, each one gets the ksuba of their mother. If not, then everything has to be split evenly. Just really an example of the case that the Mishnah said. And now the Gemara discusses what happens if the value of the property actually changes from the time of the death of the father until they actually get around to splitting it. So the Gemara says if it went down in value and now there is no extra dinar anymore, that is, at the time of the death of the father there was an extra dinar in the property besides what they're going to split, what they're going to give out as part of Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, and then it dropped from the time they're actually dividing it. So obviously that doesn't make a difference because we'll go with the value at the time of the death because the inheritors or zocha to their share the moment, the instant of the death of the father. So they each got Kesubos B'nin Dichrin then. And even if it wasn't paid out to them yet, they were zocha in it, they already own it. And then the fact that the property later went down doesn't make a difference, the inheritance is already chal. The question is, what happens if the other way? What if at the time of the death of the father there was not enough property to give out Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, and then it went up? What happens then? So the Gemara says such a case happened with the property of somebody named Beibar Tzartzor, the household of, his name was Bar Tzartzor. It was less, and then it went up over the value of Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, and they came in front of Rav Amram, and Rav Amram told those who had a smaller portion to go appease those who had a larger portion, meaning to say that they do get Kesubos B'nin and Dichrin now because the property did go up and now there is an extra dinar. Anyway, they didn't want to listen to him, so they ignored him, and he moved to enforce his psak. He said, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to poke you with a thorn that doesn't draw blood, meaning he was going to put them in chayrim. And he sent them to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was connected to the Reish Galus, and therefore he had the power to put them into chayrim. But Rav Nachman did not support his ruling. Rav Nachman overruled him, and he said, no. Because at the time of the death, the property was less than the amount. Therefore, those who had a smaller property and had a smaller ksuba and are going to get less than half, if you award Kesubos B'nin Dichrin to the other ones, well, now at the time of the inheritance, they were also zocha in the extra amount that they're not going to get if you take it away from them. They were zocha that because there was not a Kesubos B'nin, there was not an extra dinar at the time that the father had died. They were zocha in a full half. If you're going to go now and say, well, the property went up now, and therefore there is Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, you're taking something away from them that rightfully belongs to them, and therefore you're not allowed to do that. So it goes by the time of the death, doesn't matter what happens afterwards. All right, now the Gemara brings a list of questions that happen in a number of cases of inheritance, and the Gemara brings a siman first to Elef Umeya, Mitzvah Biksuba, Yaakov Zakaf, Sedosov, Bidvarim Asikin. The first two cases are exactly the same, except that the numbers are different. So the case was, at least in the first case, you have somebody who owed 1,000 zuz to someone. He had two mansions, each one was worth 500 zuz, and he sold them both to the same person. The person that he owed the money to came to try to take the properties away from the purchaser. So he took the first one, and then that was only worth 500 zuz, and he was owed another 500 zuz, so he came to take the second one. So the guy pulled out 1,000 zuz, and he said, listen, either consider the first house that you took to be worth 1,000 zuz, or else I'll give you 1,000 zuz here. Obviously, he wanted to hold on to the second one. So he said, either keep the first one for 1,000, or I'll give you 1,000 zuz cash and give me back the first house, because he wanted the two houses. So the question was, is he allowed to do that? Now, in the second case, he only owed 100 zuz, and the two properties were worth 50 zuz each. But otherwise, it's all the same. So again, the Shai was allowed to do that. So the Gemara says that Rami and Berchama wanted to say this is the same as the case in our Mishnah, where the first set of sons who had the larger ksuba coming to them wanted to inflate the value of the property and make it worth enough that there would be an extra dinar so that they could get ksubas bin dichrin. So the Gemara says here also you have the guy who wants to inflate the value of the property so that the Bachov should take it as payment for his full chov. So Gemara says it's very different. Here is not causing anybody a loss. He's offering the guy 1,000 zuz. If he doesn't want to take it, he can. If he prefers to take the land, to take the house, then he can. It's his choice, or not. He can take 1,000 zuz. He's not losing anything. However, in the case in our Mishnah, where the guy wants to inflate it, if he's successfully able to inflate the value and get ksubas bin dichrin, then he'll be taking money away from the other set of sons that are going to get less. And therefore, if he couldn't do it there, does not necessarily prove that he can't do it here. And the Gemara's next question was, if the guy actually took the 1,000 zuz, that means that this property that if he did not take the 1,000 zuz, that is, he took the property and he valued it as 1,000 zuz, when the buyer goes back to the seller, who was the person who owed the money, and he says, listen, you sold me two things, but one of them that is taken away from me is payment for a chov that you had. You have to pay me back now. How much does he have to pay? Does he have to pay the 500 zuz that it was worth, or does he have to pay the 1,000 zuz that it was considered? It was mochel a chov for 1,000 zuz. How much does he owe the guy? So the Gemara says that's a machlokes between Ravina, who says 1,000 zuz, and Rav Avira, who says 500, and the halacha is only 500. In the second case, it's 150, and again, the halacha is only 50. Next case, we have somebody who owed 100 zuz, and he died. Leftover property that was worth 50 zuz to his kids. So the Baal Chov came to take away the land that's collecting his 100 zuz. He took the 50 zuz property away. Then the Yisomim came and they wanted to give him 50 zuz to buy back their land. They gave him 50 zuz, took back the land. He wanted to collect it again for the other half of the 50 zuz. So they came to Abaye. So Abaye said the first 50 zuz that you gave was payment of the chov, because it's a mitzvah for Yisomim to pay off the chov, and that's what you did. You gave it to him. Now he can come and take back the property again. If, however, you would have specified this is to purchase back the land and this is to redeem the land that you took already, then they would not have been able to take the land back again, because you specifically redeemed it. They can't take back something that you redeemed from them. The next case, which will be our last case for this stuff, is somebody who sold his mother's ksuba. That is, his mother was married to a man other than his father. She stood to receive a ksuba from her husband either when he died or he divorced her, assuming that happened before she died. Now, if she received the ksuba and the son was still alive, then the son would have gotten the ksuba from her. So that right he sold to somebody else. Now, this is technically not allowed, because you can't sell something which you don't have yet. And he said that if she comes in and complains, I'm not guaranteeing anything. It's between you and her. If she complains, I don't back this up. You're taking your own risk. If she's not going to allow it, that's your problem. So the Gemara then says what actually happened was that his mother did not complain. She died. She left the ksuba over to him. And now he wanted to say, well, my mother didn't complain, but I'm complaining. And also, I didn't guarantee that this was going to belong to you, because she could have complained. So I'm not guaranteeing it against my own complaint either. So Gemara said, Rabbi Berchama said he has a good taina. He's coming in place of his mother. She didn't complain, but he could complain on her behalf. Rabbi said, no. He promised that he's not taking responsibility. He said he's not. He gave a warning that he's not taking responsibility if his mother complains, but on his own complaint, that he can't say, because he himself was the one who sold it. So he has to take some responsibility for his own sale, and therefore that